Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we're joined by B. Hayes Takor, VP of Marketing, and Loic Bonvarlet, Senior Vice President, Product Marketing at Kigen. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, indeed.
We're getting into some of the more nuanced technical side of track and trace, and as we know in cold chain, that's very important because we need to know where products are and also the temperature that they maintain at. And you guys play a huge role in the knowing where things are at all times part. Before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you both and how you started at Kigen. B, why don't you start us off?
Well, Kigen was really formed as a incubation business unit in ARM, the semiconductor IP giant. And that's where I came into the world of Kigen. I have been working with the IP and IoT services group at ARM for 8 years. And my inroads to Kigen were really with seeing the iSIM technology that Kigen has pioneered really provide solutions to cold chain visibility. So it's an exciting new emergent technology. I am an aerospace engineer by background, and I've designed systems and helped companies really take that technology to scale. And for the last 17 years, I've played a variety of roles in across marketing and product development that help IoT take flight. I'm based in Cambridge in the UK. Over to you, Loic.
So, hi Mary. So yeah, I'm Loic Bonvarlet. I'm leading the product and marketing at Kigen since 2018. So I joined post the acquisition of Simulity, which was the start of Kigen as a business unit and then as an autonomous company within now. And I'm also an engineer, telecom background, and spend most of my time working in cellular IoT, I would say, notably in the cellular module space and helping, companies to create cellularly connected products. So yeah, great to be here.
I'm so happy that you guys joined us today, and that's a great segue into kind of what we're talking about today, and that's that iSIM technology that you guys have. I don't honestly know of anyone else that's doing anything like it, but for those of us who aren't familiar with iSIM technology, do you mind breaking it down for us and kind of what it does for visibility tracking?
Sure. So we all might be familiar with a plastic SIM or a SIM that we've used in our smartphone. And that has two functionalities within a smartphone. One is really making sure that that has the connectivity that you rely on. And the second one is that is also the root of trust, as us geeky people call it. But what that means, it's its trust anchor in which your biometrics or your financial transactions and others can be authorized. So we've taken the kind of tried and tested SIM technology and really brought it into the chipset itself, the silicon system on chip. So this allows companies that are taking this new technology to reduce the components they're working with. And it also means that it is a far more robust form of security. So it's tamper-proof. It's also something that drastically reduces the size. So now you can take that really tried and tested technology and bring it into something that is super compact, something that might be even kind of less than 2 millimeters thick. But you can then develop lots of different components and solutions with it of different sizes and different, increasing complexity or constraints. Maybe Loic, you can kind of go a little bit more for the technical audience into how we developed it.
Yeah, sure. So effectively, if you look at cellular IoT devices, typically it's made of, for example, typically an antenna, a cellular module, and a SIM card originally, right? You have these three elements. You were packing them into a device, into a box, and making sure everything works together. right? So now what we are trying to do is to really combine the processor that runs the application, the cellular module that drives the communication, and the SIM card into one package, so it's more economical, more compact, as B was explaining. So to achieve that, there was first a requirement to make sure that you had the security baked in, right? So you have companies specialists into creating what we would call secure IP, right? Secure technology that will host the secrets that you would put into a SIM card, okay? And then on that basis, on that foundation, we run the software that Kigen delivers, right? So the SIMOS, and that runs all the logic to be compliant to the GSM specification, 3G, 4G, 5G specification, so that the device can communicate on this network and be authentified. And then the next interesting step is, since now you have a safe into a device, right? You use it, it's mandatory for telecom, but you can use it for your application as well. So we'll talk more about that, I think, later, but that gives the opportunity for companies to really think about how they can improve security into their application and their devices as well.
I think that that's something that's really important, especially, now as we're seeing a lot more, cyber threats and hacks. I think anything you can do to add that extra layer of security is going to be incredibly important, especially moving forward, to ensure that, you do have a secure supply chain, and that, your vulnerabilities to other potential threats is, you're trying to limit it as much as possible. Because I know that I know that cybercrime is only going to get a little bit worse before it gets better.
At Kigen, we also love being able to present the technology of security as also an enabler. So often security is seen as something that is, really something you do to protect against threats. But with something like eSIM, which is essentially being able to provide the SIM functionality remotely, what we've also seen is that it then opens up new opportunities and applications and use cases that we haven't been able to see before. And this all resulted really from the fact that IoT devices were seen as being tackling security at the very late stage, and that becomes then too expensive. But as Luik mentioned, getting that security really in the design itself opens a whole host of new things that can potentially be critical to business models.
So one of the things that you guys do that I really like, specifically in regard to your iSIM technology, kind of the thing that you're known for is, I know a lot of us think of, the SIM cards that go in our phones, but you guys, logistics companies have started adopting it, and they're not just sticking a phone inside a box; they're actually able to put this technology in like a shipping label. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about kind of how that works, and then also, why everyone's like kind of clamoring to adopt it?
So effectively, shipping labels, right, is, first the origin of that is before we are more tracking the container, right, tracking the reefer, tracking the truck, tracking the asset that was transporting multiple assets in that, right? But that doesn't give you necessarily the granularity that people wanted. And also before, economically, it was not possible to, bake a phone and stick it to the side of your package effectively, right? So it was just too expensive and not practical and so on, right? So, but with integrated SIM, you get to a form factor which allows really, really compact design, right? And in the form of an actual shipping label in that case, and it's still connected. So it can be affixed to the side of the box, right? And we did this work actually quite some time ago with several partners, so namely Vodafone, Bayer, and Sensos. That was kind of the origin, the first product that was launched around the iSIM value proposition. But really, the idea was to be able to track not only the location, but also some environmentals, the temperature, the opening of the box, etc. And if you extend, and this was for crops at the time, right? But if you extend that use case, right, typically a lot of assets that needs to be shipped under certain condition of tracking, etc. And so if they are not met, you have to pay a specific premium of insurance and so on. So now the economics are making kind of sense to say for a high value asset or an asset which is in relation to medical, it might be actually cheaper to have such a shipping label with this technology rather than maybe paying for the failure during transport or the insurance associated to it, right? So that I think is opening new use cases and business cases for people who do the transport of multiple types of asset, but in medical, in crop, in many domains.
Indeed, one of the examples that I think is really worth mentioning is being able to look at the efficacy of, say, medical shipments, right? Sometimes the environmental factors that um, a shipment has been exposed to during its transit become something that really can affect the end result or the outcome that is desired from them. So as companies are looking at the DSCSA regulation compliance, that's one of the big drivers for companies really looking at what other solutions are available, so they don't have to really invest in something that is a more a higher value security technology, but really take advantage of iSIM. And I think it's really, really interesting with what's happening around cold chain visibility, because we're starting to see companies really trying to address the entire globe, and so that really calls for a lot of different connectivity solutions. We were really into kind of bringing that choice and making security really, really simple.
So one of the things that people are kind of hearing a lot about is like, eSIMs when you go to another country or you're traveling, get a little eSIM on your phone. But when it comes to logistics and tracking like across the globe, how do you guys kind of handle that, since, you can't really have someone sit there and go, oh, well, it's on a ship and now it's technically like it's in the Arctic Ocean, but how, not the Arctic Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. I don't know that many boats are going through the Arctic, but but it's like crossing the Atlantic. So obviously there's not really cell towers out there. So kind of how does it work on some of those longer distances like that? And then also, if it's traveling through parts of Europe where, every couple hours it's in a new country, how do you guys kind of handle those hurdles that come with it?
So I think what you just mentioned with our consumer experience of eSIM, this is a really, really good point where, as consumers, when we're traveling to another country, we can choose the subscription, the connectivity we need. And this is the same in the kind of industrial and IoT world. So with eSIM, it changes that supply chain of SIMs and puts the OEM, the manufacturer, or the company um, in the decision making of which subscription do they need. So that's where Kigen comes in, because we work in partnership with a huge ecosystem of different providers of connectivity, and these might be known to companies as either operators, MNOs, mobile network operators, or virtual network operators who don't operate the infrastructure but provide the connectivity by having just the subscription, the profile that helps you have the agreements of travel. And within this, I think the scenario that you mentioned, obviously, shipments are going across oceans where there are no cell towers, and and so far our cellular network has been really optimized for having coverage across widely populated areas or densely populated areas. So that's where kind of we recognize this is a real challenge for cold chain suppliers. And so one of the things that we've done is introduced NTN, which is non-terrestrial network. So it's basically satellite technology, satellite connectivity in a hybrid network with cellular technology, so that we can offer a full globe coverage. And we do that with our partner Skylo Technologies. Um, and we also understand that when it's also difficult for companies hopping from one market to another. So you're sending your shipments from one country to another. that might operate with a different, operator that might have different local regulations. So we have looked at how do we ease that up, and sometimes it's easier to do that with virtual network operators, but in other times there are more specific measures that are needed. So, for example, Turkey is a good example of one country that has very strict data and IP localization laws. So you cannot just take a device and roam, as we call it. So attached to a network, and be not seen as a native device. And so there we need to kind of perform a transfer, if you will, in a way that's compliant to the local law with the entities that are meant to do that in the country. And so we have pioneered some of these examples where if you are looking to reach a market which has very strict data and IP localization regulations, then we can work with you because we bring such a big ecosystem.
Yeah, and so you have also several other geographies like that, like maybe Brazil or who have specific regulations, right, or requirements, and uh, it's to try to make the journey easier for people to integrate, right? They select, for example, cellular, MVA, IoT, MVNO specialists to really give them one global eSIM that works as in as many countries as possible, but we need to work with them on those hoops and those specific regulations so that from the end customer it appears that seamless, right? And maybe to B's earlier point is uh, the example of the consumer phone, right? Is there you have a person in charge with every device. With a fleet of autonomous device sitting in a reefer or in a truck, right? You can't do that, right? So there is an evolution currently on the next generation of SIM provisioning and SIM management that Kigen is actively contributing, even chairing the group that's working on that. And that's ready to introduce this context of fleet, right? I'm a fleet manager. I manage many devices all across the world, and I need to be able to push orders to all these devices so that the connectivity is relatively seamless for the end users, which is the fleet manager typically.
I kind of like that you guys make it look really easy. So that way, if I'm your customer, if I'm your end user, I just say, okay, I need to ship this from Germany to Prague and then something from Belgium to Turkey. And oh, look, I know where it is the whole way. But in reality, there's so much work that has gone behind it that really kind of gives that a testament of like, oh no, like we want it to be super easy for you to use and we want it to be, kind of intuitive, but at the same time, like it is quite an undertaking, but that end user isn't the one that should have to sit there and like, call up someone in Turkey going like, hi, I would just like to not break the law coming into your country with a package. So I like that you guys have taken that kind of that like the hard work out. You're like, well, not really taking it out, but taking it off the end user where you're like, no, we've got this. We know we already have it. Just ship it on. It'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely our endeavor, I would say, to make things like this simple as possible. But yeah, you're right that there is a lot of work in the background happening. And it's kind of moving things also, right? This stuff is changing quite significantly those days with a lot of geopolitics at work, right? So you need to really pay attention to these regulation, and yeah, we work with the connectivity partner to resolve them as best as possible.
I feel like that has to be another level of benefit because if I'm a fleet manager, I don't have to like I don't necessarily have time to sit there and, figure out what SIMs are going to work in what country and what SIMs are going to work in another. If I just have this stack of 20 orders that, I just need to know where they are so I can put them into the system. I also don't necessarily have the background to sit there and go, okay, well, how is this going to connect to this and how is this all going to happen? I just need to like log into my computer and get my job done so I know where everything is. And, we can make sure that we can make sure that we have all these visibility things that we've promised our customers. I feel like that has to take a huge weight off them because also, they don't have to necessarily be trained a specific way in how to do all this connectivity. It's just, nope, you stick it on the shipping label, stick it on the box and off it goes and hope that it arrives in one piece like we all worry about our freight.
Absolutely. I think this is something that we see, I've seen for many years as the key challenge for how IoT projects can take flight, to really kind of get to that full commercial scale. And there's also sometimes the choices, because it's not just good enough for rolling out a solution, but it's about how do you keep it connected for, multiple years in field, working at the same kind of quality and resiliency level that you expect. So part of this work that we do, very much in partnership with all of our connectivity partners, our chipset and module vendors, as well as system integrators, we have a number of ways in which companies can work with the technology. So one is by um, taking evaluation kits and just starting out something that is really brand new as an idea. So we want to help people help empower the best ideas that they have. um, then there is also where we bring in different partners to help them make the choices of what is right for them. And and then the next level is actually then there are products that have been through the trials and testing and have been matured and have been certified with partners. So someone who doesn't want to take on any of that development effort can really just jump to buying that product from that has resulted from the partnership. So I think having those options and having a view to how you're going to sustain and really support customer experience in the market over a number of years, that's another kind of never ending struggle for companies. And we hope that our efforts will keep them as successful at every stage as is needed.
So we are running out of time a little bit today, but there's a question that everyone comes on this show has to answer, and both of you are not an exception. So, Loic, I'm going to start with you. This might be the hardest question you get asked today. Is cereal considered soup?
So I would say personally, I don't consider cereal as a soup. That's my personal approach to this, but I'm sure that some other people can find it otherwise. Cereals are for my breakfast. I don't eat soup at breakfast, so end of story.
All right, B, is cereal considered a soup?
Ooh, this is definitely quite a hard question. But in my opinion, and I did research this at least in my household. I went to my son and asked him, as a 6-year-old, he knows the world in very absolute terms.
He is the supreme knowledge on all things in the world. Just ask any 6-year-old.
Well, exactly, exactly. But the reasons I have, where we identify, milk is not broth, and cereal's not cooked. So a cereal is the grainy part of what is submerged in milk. I'm going to say cereal's not soup. But again, that's an opinion, and whatever you fall onto that, I think you should enjoy it.
I am also team cereal's not a soup. Just because it's not, I see the case made for why it could be considered a soup. However, it's just not it for me. But I do respect those that have their opinion. But just don't be putting cereal and chicken noodle soup in the same category. Like that's not it.
It would make an interesting but confusing aisle shopping.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Where can we find you guys outside of the show if someone has some questions about iSIM, eSIM, or if they have a hot cereal soup recipe for you?
Fantastic. Well, please check us out on our online home, which is Kigen.com. And we are also running the hashtag Future of Sim Conversations on LinkedIn and X. You can find us on LinkedIn as Kigen. Loic as well is a great source of information on LinkedIn. And I'm also available for recipes and other questions. But on X, we are as Kigen underscore limited.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on FreightWaves TV or YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.